Hello, shalom, and we're gonna get you on speaker here. Is this? Hold, wait. Let's make sure we can do this by telephone. Shalom. Hello.
Yes. We're on separate phones, so we're not fighting here.
Oh,
This is Bob. I'm Bob.
shalom, Bob. Shalom, Judy. Let me give you a proper introduction. My name is Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York, and it is my great. Yes, we're talking to the daughter of a rabbi here, so she should know this very well. But let me tell you a little bit about both of these amazing people who are on the program right this second with us in the neighborhood.
Hello.
What? Shalom. Well, let me give you an introduction here. Let me tell all the wonderful people. First of all, Bob Dishy, veteran actor since the 1950s. He made his debut, if you can believe this, in the original Damn Yankees on Broadway. And then he was cast in the lead of I Wonder Who's Killing Her Now after Peter Sellers left that movie. He's done Columbo. He was Tony. I don't know if he won the Tony or was Tony nominated for Sly Fox on Broadway. And then he was in Sly Fox again when they brought it back to Broadway. He did a bunch of other Broadway shows. And let us not forget his lovely and adorable and wonderful wife, Judy. Now, forgive me if I've been saying this incorrectly. Is it Graubart or Graubart?
Well, that's a family dispute. We'll say Graubart today, just to please everybody in the family.
Oh, good. It pleases me too because that's the way I've been saying it, and I'm a rabbi. I'm always right. So it's Graubart. Graubart. So it's a mix of both. Graubart.
You can say it whatever way you want, you know.
Like raw heart, Graubart. I'll still screw it up, but I'll try. Well, you remember her from the movie, the Marshall Brickman comedy film Simon, where she was on there with Alan Arkin. But even more so, if you were growing up in the 70s, you watched on public television The Electric Company. Oh my God, what a show! So she, of course, was Jane of the Jungle and all these other characters on that funny show that taught people how to read. So put your words together. Shalom. Shalom to Judy and Bob. Shalom to you. Welcome.
Welcome. Alaikum shalom.
Oh, and shalom aleichem to you, Tom. So let me ask you, first of all, Judy, being the daughter of a rabbi, were you Orthodox, semi-Orthodox, modified Orthodox, what?
You know, I don't know. We called it conservative way back then, but today I guess you'd call it Orthodox because on Shabbat we observed Shabbat and Kashrut and didn't ride to shul. The synagogue was right around the corner, so we just walked there. You know, and I couldn't use my coloring books or my paper dolls, but the Sabbath was lovely. I mean, it is still a lovely day, a lovely idea.
Well, can you use your coloring books and paper dolls now on Shabbos?
Yeah, I do. I still have them, and yeah, I could do whatever I want with scissors and pencil.
So do you and Bob, do you celebrate like Passover? Do you do the Yom Kippur or anything over the past few decades or not?
Yeah, well, I feel like I could call myself a 3-day Jew, but we do celebrate Passover, and when my son was living here, we did Shabbat every Friday night, you know, potatoes and the challah and all that, and I'm a lapsed Jew, I have to confess.
A lapsed Jew. And what about you, Bob? Were you raised in like semi-conservative, reformed, or even almost without religion?
Well, I would say my mother and father obviously were more attuned to religious than I was. Mine was more just a secular.
Where's this basketball?
But I'm also a Sephardic. So it's a little different in terms of the tradition. And what I remember most was the food, the wonderful Middle Eastern.
Well, it's really, he eats, of course, I'm Ashkenazi, so he can eat as much rice and beans as he wants, but that's forbidden for the Ashkenazi. So I don't know what pot to use for what, you know. So I just gave up altogether.
Well, I generally use...
I went through the rituals of bar mitzvah, et cetera, but then it's just, I guess I like to think that I think of Spinoza as Einstein's use of an arrow into Judaism and God.
Which is what?
I don't. Does
anybody hear anything?
Yes. But what did Spinoza say?
I don't remember Spinoza. I know his first name, Baruch, that's all I know about Spinoza.
Yeah.
That's the easiest part of him to understand.
Right. So you study Baruch Spinoza and arrow into what? Could you explain what you just said?
No.
Oh.
I think, I don't know. Bob has talked about it here to me, and I would say, Einstein said he follows Spinoza's God, which is...
Well, he said, I believe in the God of Spinoza.
Okay.
I don't want to misquote you, Albert, wherever you are, with all due respect.
Well, I don't think he minds, honestly. And Judy, by the way, if you're ever wondering which pot to use, there's the Sinsemilia that comes from Mexico that's really, really strong. You should try it. It's very good.
It's poisonous.
That explains everything, I think. So let me, Judy, speaking, since we're still talking a little bit about religion, and can you do the cheer commercial in German or Hebrew?
I can do it in German. Die glauben, ich schaffe nicht, das neue Farbbeweis zu beschreiben. Ich weiß, was ist. Das ist weiß wie ein Gespenst. It's whiter than a ghost. The clothes that you, even if they're colored, you put them in the wash and they come out bright white. I did it in German because I went to Germany to do the commercial because they had a similar product, and so I remembered it, and it's a kind of mantra for me. When I was giving birth to my son, I just kept saying that over and over, and
Yeah, no, I get it. It's like I'll probably, when I have to get the coronavirus shot, I'm very scared of needles. I'll just be repeating that over and over in German. It's like the Well, let me ask you, since you went, this would have been quite a few years ago. Was it weird for you to go to Germany?
Yes, it was. Well, for one thing, aside from the obvious, nobody that I worked with spoke any English, so that was one difficulty. But of course, yeah, being in Germany, I redeemed myself because I changed my first class airfare to coach, which enabled me to go to Jerusalem. So I did my teshuvah. I repented in Israel.
No, that's yeah. You just gave me so much nachas, and I know you know what that means. But
yeah.
How are you both? I should ask you. I mean, Bob, you're getting up there. Are you in your 90s at this point, or still late 80s, Bob?
I'm 22.
You're 20. Really, 20?
In my head, I'm 17.
I thought you asked Bob if he was in his undies.
Oh, it could be, and maybe that's why you didn't want to do the Zoom thing. But
no, I'm still in my 80s.
Oh, still and you're feeling, thank God. How are you guys getting through the pandemic?
Quietly.
Well, actually, I feel guilty because it's not really much of a burden for me because I really prefer not to leave home at all, ever. So,
you are Jewish, yeah.
Yeah. And I have my coloring books, and, they're not filled yet.
Well, you aren't doing nothing, because we do want to tell people that on March 8th, Tuesday night, you can...
I think it's in the afternoon, isn't it?
Oh,
you're talking about at the Food for Thought.
Yes. Why don't you Bob, you tell everybody where to...
Judy and I, and there's another play, there are two plays done, Food for Thought, which is something that Susan Charlotte started many, many, many years ago, and she has continued doing it. Of course, because of the virus, it had to slow down for a while, but she was the first theater to open a few months ago in a limited way. And Judy and I are doing an old Tennessee Williams one-act. I guess that will be zoomed. Zoom is nothing that Judy and I...
Obviously, make sure it works.
If it works, it doesn't work. It's also, I just find it somewhat impersonal in a way. It's better just have the voice. Anyway, so we're doing that on the 8th. I think the show starts at 2 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Must be a way to get in touch with that.
And the theater?
Oh, we're doing... Well, the theater is on... I think it's 80 St. Mark's Place, which is on 8th Street and 1st Avenue.
What's the name of the theater?
It's literally called 80 St. Mark's. It's
But most of the people will get it through Zoom. They only allow about 15 people in live, separated. Still, it has certain...
By the way, I don't know if this is any kind of spoiler, but it's not a typical Tennessee Williams play by any means. It's... That's all I'll say.
Well, we will tell people that the name of the one act is called Lifeboat Drill, so that may give you some idea. And it's also on a bill with a Christopher Durang play, and Christopher Durang is going to be showing up. He'll be on Zoom also.
Yes, he'll be doing the Zoom.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know that? Okay, I'm spoiling it for you.
I knew that, but he won't be live at the theater.
Oh,
Judy and I will be live at the theater.
And I'm assuming, I read somewhere Carol Baker will be on Zoom as well. Now she...
No.
Oops,
I think it's Carol Baker's daughter.
Oh, Blanche Baker. She's in the other show.
Maybe Carol Baker will be on Zoom.
Right.
Also, I don't...
Is that Carol Baker Sayers? No.
No, Carol Baker.
Carol Baker.
Wonderful actress.
Okay.
Who knew Tennessee Williams? She was Baby Doll.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
And her daughter is Blanche Baker, who has been on this program, and she is doing the Christopher Durang play. So blah blah blah.
Right,
it's all one big family. It really is. Now we are talking with Bob Dishy and his wife Judy Graubart. Did I say it? I got it. Graubart. Okay. Now we can start the interview. So, Bob, one of the things that we love to do, that I'd love to do when I talk to people who've been in the industry like you have, is that you have appeared with everybody. So I would love to hear anecdotes and stories, either funny or dark or whatever, about some of the people that you have dealt with in your amazing career. So I'll throw names at you. You were in the debut of Arthur Miller's The Creation of the World and Other Business. Do you have an Arthur Miller story?
He was so thin then.
Arthur Miller. Well, I got to be friendly with Arthur because he also grew up in Brooklyn, went to Lincoln High School. And when I first met him, of course, there was this sense of awe. But when I met him, I saw he was someone I could have grown up with because of his just relationship to life, the way he spoke. He just... there was no image to him. I mean, it was a direct contact with him when you had a conversation. We sat in a coffee shop and were just talking. He wasn't Arthur Miller, the Arthur Miller. It was this guy, Arthur. I had a similar experience with two other people that I had the good fortune to work with, Brando and Marcello Mastroianni. And they were both the same way. I mean, they knew they had this image that they had to get past in a relationship with someone because people didn't deal with them directly as who they were.
You put them at ease.
I put them at
That's
ease.
it. That's what did it. But Brando was not nuts yet. He was, when you had a conversation...
He was never nuts. I don't know why you say that.
Well, he was anti-Semitic in a certain... He kind of lost it.
Where do you have that from?
Read the stories. He was saying bad things about Jews in Hollywood.
You sound like the news.
He did the first play that was a Zionist play.
Oh, that's right.
True. This is true.
Maybe.
All right. Well, all right. So maybe he stayed. I mean, when was the last time you talked to Marlon Brando, Bob? When
I did the movie, but I can only tell you from my personal experience, he never said anything anti-Semitic to me.
Not back then. Yeah.
So I don't know why you spread something like that.
Whoa.
Well, the rabbi might know something.
I'm not saying you're wrong or right. It's just you're so flippant.
And I could be wrong. But I
said it about if you said it about T.S. Eliot.
Oh well, yeah.
For people,
Wagner, yes.
Substantiated and stuff.
Okay, let's get. I want to change the subject.
Yes,
I want to hear something else.
Well, I want to hear, as I said, I want to hear either really lovely, positive stories about, or ugly stories about people. Either one, as long as they're true. So, tell me something wonderful or not wonderful about working with Liza Minnelli on Floor of the Red Mass.
But we're still not finished with Brando and Mastroianni.
Oh, okay. Tell me about Marcello Mastroianni then.
Oh, Mastroianni was a delight. You know, both of them are such natural actors. They don't sweat it. They're not consumed by it. They do it in a way that have fun. I mean, the thing about Mastroianni's playfulness is that when I did this movie with him, we would go out and have dinner. And at one of these dinners, a woman came over and looked at him and said, I know you from somewhere. This was up in Toronto. I know you from somewhere. And he would start with, yes, we grew up together in Long Island. And he made this whole story about horseback riding and tennis in a charming way. I mean, he wasn't irritated by it. And then eventually she knew who he was, and they got along well that way. But they were just so natural at what they did. You know, I've worked with other actors, no names, and myself included sometimes, where you get nervous, was this good, was that bad, is this better than that? They just swim in it. It's like Elaine Stritch said about Brando, about acting. To teach him acting is like teaching a lion how to function in the jungle. He just does it.
There's just something so natural that it can. Well, the thing about you as an actor, Bob Dishy, is that I mention a name or people will see your face and they'll see you, have seen you on Columbo or the many, many movies and things that you've done. And they kind of know there's a certain Bob Dishy style, a certain performance. What is, in your mind, the most un-Bob Dishy role that you've ever done?
I don't know, but I don't know what the regular role is.
Six Who Pass While the Lentils Boil.
That was my first play.
That was your first play, but we wouldn't.
You know, I don't know what my style is. I have an idea. You know, that's in the eye of the beholder, in a sense.
Well, I mean, you've been called like Jewish everyman kind of character, and I did not make that up. I got that on the air.
No, I know that. And I remember somebody used to call me the Jewish Dirk Bogard.
Oh, and then also the Jewish lawyer very often.
From that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really ever feel connected to the business in a strange way. Because of all the hype and...
Well, that's very important. That's not, I mean, it's best not to get caught up in that.
Well, I think most actors feel that way. They just know that the marketplace, which has gotten more of a marketplace than it used to be, most actors start out concentrating on the work and wanting to do it as best as possible, and then all those fringe stuff comes in.
I want to say something about the food for thought, because it's we don't rehearse. We do it. We rehearse a half an hour before the show, so that's very little. But it's very fun. It's very much fun. I don't know if fun is a noun now.
It's a fun, yes. Well, that's wonderful. I mean, that's good. I mean, it's a comic play anyway. You're not doing Streetcar. You're doing Lifeboat. What is it? It's called Lifeboat Drill.
Yeah.
You know, when it started, way in the beginning
of Food
for Thought, when Susan Charlotte was starting it, we did a play. Elaine Stritch and I did an Arthur Miller play.
Yeah.
And that was a wonderful experience. I mean, it was so spontaneous, because that's the advantage of Food for Thought, because there's very minimal rehearsal. It's not meant to be a rehearsed piece, so it's more alive at the reading.
And it allows the actor to take chances in a way. We're not directed in a certain, we're not given line readings, and of course we don't move around. We do a sitting reading, but what was I going to say? It's a freedom. It's a freedom, and you can take risks.
Well, didn't you both start in improvisation?
We didn't start there.
In the middle.
We were both worked through Second City.
Right.
At the beginning of Second City, before it became somewhat of a factory. We were there in the beginning years.
Yeah, it was a real deal.
And a lot of it, from my experience with it, was because Paul Sills was involved as a director, and I worked with him, for a year. And
Wow.
then, Judy worked in a later company, but also.
Yes, but in Chicago where it all started.
Yeah, started in Chicago. I was in the first New York company down in the Village.
So did that prepare you, because you guys had such early training with story theater and also the Chicago Second City, to go into a thing like Food for Thought, unlike other actors who just, the first day of a reading, they're off book, and everything has to be...
Well, that's like the big difference between Marlon Brando and Anthony Hopkins. I like their extreme. They're both at the opposite end of practicing. Brando, of course, as you probably know, as most people know, sometimes didn't even learn lines. He would have, I really don't like to say this because I like part of the magic, he would have the words written out and pasted on parts of the set. And he would look at, and the reason he did that, eventually, of course, he knew the lines, was to maintain a kind of spontaneity to what he was doing. Whereas Anthony Hopkins wanted to know every line, code, backwards and forwards. You could wake him up in the middle of the night and he would know the lines of the piece he was doing. But also he was doing that for the same result, was for a kind of spontaneity.
Does he ever bother to say hello? Can he improvise talking when he's not on stage or on camera? He doesn't have to. He can talk. I'm saying he's not wedded to this notion about beforehand. He has to know.
No. I'm not talking about interpretation. I'm talking about just knowing the line.
Yeah.
It's like a musician, a concert pianist. They're going to know the notes, so that their second nature. They become muscle memory, so that his energy goes into spontaneity of the creation. So they're both.
They're both valid. They're both reasonable approaches.
There's different ways to climb the mountain, so to speak.
Yes.
And both effective.
Now, I want to talk just a little bit also to Judy, because Bob Disher, I could throw a name out at him and say, well, let's talk about this person. But also Judy, it's true. Come on, I haven't even asked yet about,
But you didn't ask me about my friend Davey that I grew up with. You don't know about him or Marvin or Salvatore.
All right, tell me about one of them, and then I'll ask Judy about the electric company. So tell me about Salvatore or Davey. Oh, Davey's a good name.
They were great, these kids I grew up with. Unfortunately, most of them, they're not here anymore. They passed on, but I miss them. Because it was great growing up in Brooklyn in those days.
Well, tell me a Davey, a Salvatore, or the other guy's story. Tell me a funny anecdote of your childhood growing up in Brooklyn.
Well, Salvatore, we went to the same public school, and we lived on the same block. And sometimes we could each walk home for lunch because it was just a half a block away. And sometimes Sal would come over to my house and we'd have lunch at my house. And the thing about him, and I know this has happened to other people, I would make Salvatore laugh, and he would laugh so much he would be drinking milk, and the milk would come out of his nose. I don't know if you're aware that happens.
Oh, yeah.
I thought when I mentioned that story, that's happened to other people too.
Was Salvatore the one that you went down into the basement?
Oh, yes, but we don't want to.
Oh, no, that's cute. It's
Salvatore and I decided, what's it like to be drunk? When people. So
9 years old.
9 years old. So we go into my basement, and Sal got this bottle, I think it was scotch, and we sat there with little shot glasses, and I'd take a drink. Sal would take a drink. I'd say, well, how do you feel? I feel all right. You feel all right. Then he would take a drink, and we kept drinking and drinking. And then nothing seemed to happen. I wasn't aware of everything. Then Sal went home. And I go upstairs, and I'm like in another world, running around. My mother looks at me. That was...
Oh, good. Alcoholic poisoning. What could be a better time for a child? I love it.
As a result, I don't drink.
Good for you. Good for you. Except on Passover, you need the 4 cups. But other than that, but let me. So that was very cute stories of Bob Dishy's childhood. Let us ask Judy Graubart about her years on a beloved program, The Electric Company. First of all, we'll start since we're name dropping and stuff like that. Morgan Freeman, you used to have crossword puzzle races with him?
Oh, yes, we did. How did that get out into the public?
Well, I read it in the Torah. It was in my Torah portion this morning. It mentioned this, yeah.
No, we had to spend. We did have dressing rooms that were somewhere in the ether, so we all hung out in the makeup and hair room, and had to while away the time since we just wouldn't rehearse because actually the show was so complicated technically to put up the words and to make us look like we were in midair. They had so much to concern themselves that we could sort of do whatever we wanted. I mean, we had to stick to the academic part of it, but yeah, we used to do a lot of things in that room.
Oh, okay, do tell.
Bill Cosby was on the show, and Rita Moreno was on the show. Yes,
of course.
And
so do you have any Rita Moreno stories and any Cosby stories? And they don't have to be like, oh, he gave me a drink and then I woke up, 5 hours later. I didn't know where I was.
Right. I found myself. I woke up and I wasn't. He sort of teased me in a way that there was the dressing room. I forgot about that. We had the makeup room and then the dressing room, which I'll do a side thing for you.
Sure.
Because we didn't rehearse these things until we got on the floor. We fell on the floor, but with the dressing room, because we didn't have to memorize anything. We did it enough times, rehearsing with the camera, so we didn't have to. But every day, you didn't really know what you were going to do. You had maybe 4 or 5 sketches, but every one of us had our own wardrobe. Just that long bar when they hung the costumes. And you'd come in, I know I would come in and I'd just look at the costumes and I'd see, something like a ball gown and then maybe a football helmet. And it was a treat. It was really a treat.
Well, that sounds fun. I mean, it sounds like a lot of fun. I had gotten the feeling, I don't know, I mean, there were certain people at that point that no one had necessarily heard of. Skip Higgins was Fritz the Cat and Luis Avalos, and then there was Bill Cosby, Rita Moreno, and Morgan Freeman wasn't known at that point. Was there? Did they resent having to do children's television at that point, or did they feel like it was a mission? Like, I'm doing quality work here.
If you follow Morgan, you know that he was not so proud of doing a show for children. I mean, he was reluctant, and he was, but he got into it after a while. There are at Second City to warm up. You do some games, you play games that Viola Spolin made up for actors, and it's mostly. It's exercises where you don't know who you are. You have to guess who you are. It's all pantomime, really. And the goal is, of course, to free yourself from earthly things and you get into the theater things. And Morgan just thought those games were so silly. Well, they do look silly, but he caught on after. He was okay. He did have a good time.
Good.
But Viola Spolin was Paul Still's mother. Paul Still is the one who started basically Second City and this kind of game to free people, and started Second City in the beginning, which when I say became a factory, I just mean by that it became all these comics since the 60s who come out are successful have been at Second City, either in Los Angeles, New York, Toronto, because it's like a workshop a form for which them to develop their talent.
There's one change that has happened when we did our shows. We had very few props. We had chairs, sort of ice cream kind of chairs, and maybe a piece of fur, like a lady's fur with the fox heads on it, and a hat or two. And we had to pantomime everything that we made our wear, which is what Paul called it, our scene. It was our wear. And then when we last saw Second City, they had real props, and that took a lot away from it, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have to plead guilty because one of the first shows with props I did with Dick Shaw, another actor there, and it was about two long-hauling truck drivers who couldn't stay awake. And in it, we had beer, and we actually used, real bottles to do that, and some props. And I remember Sills and Bernie Solomon, who was sort of the business manager, saying, "Hey, that's the first scene where we're using all these props." And let it go.
Depends on the scene. Sometimes
it's a great training ground. If you look at all these people who come out of it, and you'll know their names. Name any comic today or comic actor, and most of them, the original people from Saturday Night Live, and many of those people have gone through.
And Second City, of course, yeah. Now, can I ask?
Find us at home.
Sorry. Let me ask, because we have a little more time with the wonderful Bob Dishy and Judy Graubart. So, Bob, let me ask you, speaking of funny people and people who can be really funny on the fly, although a not funny question, you were in the last movie of Robin Williams. Any stories?
The stories about Robin Williams, well, I just had this one scene with him. He's a very, how do I say? I don't know him before. I know him then. He's a very, on this particular, he's very serious. I've done movies with certain actors, and they joke a lot. They're, comics who are constantly on. He's not like that, or was not here. He's very serious in what he's doing, and when he finishes a take, he'll discuss it with the director and the other actors, maybe try it again or something.
Right.
That's all I can say. Very dedicated to the work he was doing there.
Now, who's an actor that you've worked with who's really, really funny all the time and always making jokes and tummeling and always on?
Oh, I don't want to say.
Well, that's not a negative thing. That's a...
No.
Well, I'll say, let me see.
You find me.
Oh, I know. But it sort of keeps them awake. Martin Short.
Oh, yeah. I get that.
What's his name? He was on a TV show. But it's fun. I don't know how they do it, actually. Because I don't know how they still have the energy.
I have a famous person story.
Please.
I was supposed to do a scene with Al Pacino in a movie that Bob was a major character. It was
Author,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had two scenes. One of them was a page or so with Pacino, but the day that we were supposed to do it, he had an abscess tooth. So what was left of me was the other part where I literally say, dinner is served. That was the extent of that. So I never did work with him.
But how was working with him, since you did Bob Dishy in that film? You were a major doctor character there. So how was Al Pacino?
Oh, he's fine.
Okay, good to know.
I don't know what these anecdotes are. You go on to work. It's like a craftsmanship. You go in there, and you do it. The ones who I was most impressed with were Brando and Marcello Mastroianni.
Well, let me ask you this, Bob Dishy. Your last Broadway assignment was in 2004 when you recreated Sly Fox again. So how come you haven't done Broadway even in your 70s? You could have done. Was that a choice?
Well, I don't see any place to do.
Well, not right now.
And I didn't go after anything to see to do. After a while, it's also, if you're going to do something 8 times a week, you want to be able to, that it's challenging. And
I've been acting.
It's comfortable to do that.
I've been acting since my heyday. I've been acting because as a mother of a young child, they can't do much when they're adults and out away from home. I had to pretend lots of things. It's like, oh, that's beautiful, or it's just there's some acting involved in that.
Well, sure. Well, let me ask you. You also made, I guess, the choice not to work together in the quote-unquote heyday, like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I think there's a quote somewhere where you say, darling, we're not the Lunts. Or you could have been. Was there a conscious choice of not really?
You bring up the Lunts for a certain reason. Do you know something? Because I would often say, Bob, let's do something together. Why don't we find something and do something together? And he said, Judy, we are not the Lunts.
We're working on Monday.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And we will be the Lunts.
Right. Okay, that's good.
Well, do you think this will lead to more projects that you might do together?
Well,
or
we've done a lot of these at Food for Thought.
Yeah.
Those kind of experiences there is doing it. I don't know what you think these plays are that you talk about to do.
Oh, well, I mean
now, of course, it's difficult because a lot of them are just waiting to be done somewhere because of the virus.
Rabbi, do you have an agent?
I will. Please hook me up with yours. I'll do anything.
Well, we don't either. Just thought you might be connected to, put in a word for us.
I'm doing this Facebook podcast as a favor for my friend Dave. Does it look like I have an agent?
Well, tell us something about Dave.
Well, there's nothing to know about him. He's an interesting fellow.
And he has a lovely wife.
He does. Oh,
do you have any wisdom? Are rabbis supposed to have wisdom? Don't you have a good rabbi story that is a metaphor for existence?
Basically, the Holocaust is a metaphor for everything. If you're alive and Jewish, look at the Holocaust and you will see the answer to everything we go through in this world. Except
I think that the Bible or Jewish the writings encourage you to be fruitful and multiply and have fun.
That's fun. There's nothing more fun than being fruitful. And the multiplying part, that gets difficult. But the fruitful part, I could do that 5 times a day. As a matter of fact, I have 21 and a half beautiful children at this point. It's a lot, but we're trying.
Is it half boy or half girl?
We don't know yet. We're waiting for the head to take its proper shape. We're waiting at this point, yeah. By the way, we've been talking so fun and so delightfully. And by the way, we've only, I think, scratched the surface. So I would love to invite you guys back. If you're not angry at me for dissing Marlon Brando, I would love for you guys to come back to the neighborhood quite soon, like the next time you're doing a Food for Thought production thing, and come back and do more with us in the neighborhood.
With you and Dave?
Well, me or I guess you don't like me very much, so maybe you can try it with Dave.
I don't understand. The only thing is, in other words, when you bring up that thing about Brando, that's the first I've heard of it. So maybe I'm just
do a little Googling. I could be misremembering. I just recall he was saying some bad things around the time he was acting with Matthew Broderick.
I'm a research assistant. I'll look into this.
Okay, well, please. Let me remind everybody, though, this is important, that on Monday at 2 o'clock check the time, but I think it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
right.
Go to foodforthoughtproductions.com. Foodforthoughtproductions.com. And
is that how they get on? Zoom is just so alien to me. And to do it, or we've never done it. I've done it once. I didn't enjoy doing it.
Passover, we did it.
Oh, right. But the question I ask, is that because I know people can watch it through Zoom. So the address you're giving, is that an address how they can also get on it through Zoom?
I'm assuming, I'm giving the address of the theater company, as you know. So I'm assuming that there's a link on that page that will either bring you to be able to watch it through, like, YouTube or something, or maybe they go into the Zoom room and watch quietly while you guys do what you do. I don't know the logistics of it. You guys will be in person, though. You will be on the stage at 80 St. Mark's Place. I'm not going to invite people because you don't want lots and lots. It's a pop-up thing, I guess.
They already have the 15 or 20 people.
Yeah. But who wouldn't want to see Bob Dishy and Judy Graubart do what they do? It has been such a delight and such a joy having you in the neighborhood.
Yes, thank you.
Same here.
I wish you breaking many, many legs on Monday in the show, success and good health to you.
To be continued.
Yes, God willing. God willing. Have a most happy Passover time, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care. Thank you.
Shalom to you.
Shalom, shalom,
Uvracha. Bye-bye. Wow! Wow! Bob Dishy, Judy Graubart, me in the neighborhood. And now, Dave is coming back with more of Dave's Gone By.